I know the exact day that I volunteered to go to war. It was Memorial Day 2007. I had been in the Army for over 26 years, 7 years on active duty, the rest of it as a reservist in the Bay Area. But I had never been deployed to a war zone. I left active duty just before the first Gulf War, and because of my rank and the fact that my current reserve unit was involved in training other units to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, I had not been called to active duty after 9/11. A reserve unit is a funny thing. You meet once a month, and sometimes you spend 2 weeks a year together. But you live in different parts of the geographic area, so you don't tend to spend a lot of time outside the unit with your soldier friends. And yet, because you have shared experiences, and many of you have shared the same training experiences, you become friends, even if it's for just those 2 days or 2 weeks a year. I had a friend like that in my reserve unit in Pleasanton, California. Her name was Meredith Howard. We all called her Mimi. She and I worked together on maintaining the unit's participation roster, and it was always a pleasure to work with her. As often happens with reservists, she and her husband decided to move to another state to start a business. Not long after that, she was called to active duty. So while I knew she was no longer at our unit, I did not know that she had been deployed to Afghanistan. Then, on September 8th, 2006, she was riding in an Army convoy in the capital of Afghanistan. An al-Qaeda suicide bomber maneuvered alongside Mimi's vehicle and detonated about 33 pounds of explosives. She didn't have a chance. She's the oldest woman killed in combat in the U.S. Army. We found out about it via email the next day. The following drill, we met with her sister, who still lives in the area, and she read us the last letter that Mimi wrote before she was killed. My life went on, but it was a very sad reminder of what many of the people I had served with were facing. Contrary to what a lot of people think, there are many people in the Army that also tend to think of Memorial Day as just another long weekend, and I was one of those. But the Memorial Day after Mimi was killed, I made sure to find out where my local memorial services were being held. It happened to be very close to my house, so I walked over early in the morning for the dawn service. I didn't want to sit in a chair and listen to anyone else. I just walked around the cemetery and thought about Mimi and the other people that I knew that were serving. At that point, I knew that I could not live with myself if I didn't volunteer to serve in either Afghanistan or Iraq. The idea that another husband or wife might lose someone who had been back 2, 3, or 4 times when I'd been lucky enough not to have been sent over at all just wasn't something I could accept. When I first volunteered at my unit the following month, they said they really needed me to work for my Pleasanton Reserve Unit, so starting in 2008, I started active duty in Pleasanton. But by the end of the year, I'd been asked to attend a training class at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, then to deploy to Iraq. I served for 10 months at Camp Victory, Baghdad, with a tiny detachment of 15 other soldiers supporting the Corps' civil affairs efforts. In a very strange coincidence, one of the members of our unit had been assigned to Mimi's higher headquarters in Afghanistan when she was killed, and he provided the photos that even I find hard to look at. My experience in Iraq was interesting, and some of the craziness that makes up working for a headquarters during wartime could make up many digital stories. But for me, the real story was that even after 26 years in service, I didn't feel that I had really served when I considered the ultimate sacrifice that Mimi and her family made, and all the other service members that didn't come home.